All right, we're back with our half-hour huddle. This week we have former Ohio State legend wide receiver Michael Jenkins, played in the early 2000s on the 2002 National Championship team, former first-round pick by the Atlanta Falcons. How are you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I appreciate you doing this. So how are you surviving quarantine so far?
Man, it's actually been not too bad. Family's been doing well.
That's good to hear.
Um,
That's good to hear.
yeah,
So
uh,
what's
yeah,
post-football
kids are
like?
surviving, and we've been working out, getting stuff in.
Good to hear. What's post-football like been like for you?
So I own a CrossFit gym.
Hmm.
Had that about 5 years now, and I work for Stryker with
Okay.
medical device sales.
Okay. So you're staying busy after that.
Yeah,
So I want to kind of go back, talk about Ohio State there a little bit. Um, Obviously, 2001, you guys were, a good team, not great team. 2002, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but you guys, it felt like exploded on the scene that year. What was the journey like for that season?
yeah. So '01 was Trestle's first year. I think we
Yep.
went like 7-5 or something.
Yeah.
Um, Lost to South Carolina in the Outback Bowl, and Trust really was able to get his system implemented, and guys really bought in his second year. And with some addition of a Maurice Claret, and of course other players that stepped up, and big time players like Mike Doss on the defensive end, things just really started to gel.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember that season very vividly. Felt like you guys were playing a lot of close games, but you always did enough to win the games.
Right? Yeah, there were never any blowouts. I mean, we went to overtime with Illinois and close game with Purdue, Wisconsin. So it was a lot of nail biters that year, but we were always able to come out on top.
So a lot of people remember you in Ohio State for that Purdue game. I had the chance to see Craig Krenzel speak recently, and he kind of talked about that, how this was completely out of Jim Tressel's normal playbook. 4th and 2. Rarely would you ever see Jim Tressel say, "All right, like we're going to throw the ball deep." What was kind of your mindset when that was the play call?
Just really just run and execute it. I don't know if Tressel initially wanted to maybe go deep on it. He thought maybe he can hit the underneath drag and just kind of pick up something and get the first down. But uh, we ended up with Holy Buckeye, so it worked out.
And you're forever in Ohio State, memory, one of the most iconic plays of the last 30 years in Ohio State history for sure. Uh, so a couple weeks later, you guys beat Michigan. Um, you get the call you're going to play against Miami. What was the team's mindset kind of going into that game? Because, you know, the previous year, Miami, they had all these draft picks, they had players go to the NFL, and they returned. And if I remember right, you guys were potentially the largest underdog in national championship history at that point.
Probably was, but we always knew in our locker room that it didn't matter what everybody else thought, but we could win that game. Um, and I think it showed, those first few plays of the game with our defense coming out. So we always had the mindset that we could win it, and was able to go out and do it in a thriller, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's still one of the classic games. Obviously, there was a little bit of controversy there at the end, um, but you guys end up pulling out the victory. You guys had an incredibly talented team. There's a couple iconic moments that stand out there because one play that I see replayed continuously is when Maurice Claret stole the ball from Sean Taylor. Um,
Yeah,
do you remember that play by chance at all?
I do. I mean, it was a big play. Krenzel threw a pick basically in the end zone. And Chantel and those guys, I mean, they're trying to score every time they get the ball on defense. So he was trying to get to the end zone, and Claret just made a heck of a play to not only get him down, but to get the ball back. So that's just the type of mentality we had as a team.
So, because that game goes to overtime, if I remember right, it never should have went to overtime because I think there was a holding call that should have been on you, and you guys should have got a first down at that point. It was either you or Chris
Yeah,
Gamble.
I believe it was on Gamble. That wasn't called, and just the way it went. I mean, the refs made bad calls both ways, and it ended up going into overtime and double overtime.
So you guys are defending national champions then. I kind of want to move on to 2004 then. It's your senior year. You're returning a lot of players. Um, you guys, I don't want to say don't live up to the hype, but you have a couple of losses in there. Was there anything that might have changed in the mindset, or do you think it might have just been now that you had a target on your back that was the defending champions that everybody was kind of gunning for you at that point?
I mean, of course, everybody is when you're number one, and at that time, and we had won 22 straight games, and then we lost to Wisconsin at the very end of the game in a close game, and still had a chance to go back to the national championship game, but we ended up losing to Michigan the last year, my senior year.
Hmm.
So, I mean, basically 2 losses in 2 years, which I'm pretty excited about, but it sucks that we weren't able to get back to the national championship that next year.
What was it like to have Craig Krenzel as a quarterback? Because you look at kind of how the quarterbacks are now, they're slinging a little more around. Craig Krenzel wasn't ever a guy that was going to throw for 350 yards in a game, wasn't going to throw for 5 touchdowns in a game.
Yeah, it's just kind of the offense and the style that we had at the time. Um, Tressel was big on defense,
Hmm.
special teams, field position, running the ball. So we weren't going to throw the ball 40 times a game for 400 yards. And that was just us, and we ran with that. But Tressel was a great coach and able to adapt. Once he got Troy Smith and then Ted Ginn and all those guys, and they opened it up and went 5 wide. So
Hmm.
that's what made Tressel special as a coach and recognizing, what his team needed to do to win.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking back on your college career, is there a play or a moment or a game that really stands out as like, one of your favorite moments or memories from your playing days?
Oh man, jeez. I mean, just winning the national championship was
Hmm.
probably one of the most exciting nights and craziest games I had ever been in. So that's something you just kind of never forget. Just
Hmm.
from the pregame, seeing all the players, the pro players that came back to the game from our side and Miami side, man, it was just a really special night.
I believe it. I remember seeing just there's pictures of all sorts of celebrities and former players on the sidelines there that, the
Yeah.
star-studdeds were out that night.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
what is it like to be part of Ohio State's tradition at wide receiver? Because you look at the guys that have kind of gone through, for instance, Ted Ginn just signed another contract where he's still playing, 15
Mhm.
years later. What's it like to be part of that history of one of the greatest wide receivers in Ohio State history?
I mean, it's pretty cool. I still don't consider myself to be up there with some of the greats, like Chris Carter and Terry Glenn, um, and Joey Galloway, those guys. But it's definitely a deep tradition of receivers. And Coach Hartline, who's the receiver coach now, has just
Hmm.
been incredible with training up these young guys and seeing a guy like Michael Thomas and um, my guy up in Washington right now, McLaurin. I mean, guys are just taking it to the next level and excelling as well. So it's just special to be a part of Ohio State and to see the receivers playing as well as they are right now.
So, kind of moving ahead now, you were there. Were you recruited by John Cooper or were you recruited by
I
Tressel?
was
Okay.
no
So,
Cooper. Yeah, I had Cooper for a year.
okay. So you've now seen essentially 4 different coaches over the last 20 plus years. Cooper for a short period of time, Tim Tressel, then Urban Meyer for his period, and Ryan Day. What do you make of the current Ryan Day regimen?
I mean, I think he's doing a great job. He's killing it in the recruiting, which people were kind of skeptical about how he would do, trying to follow Urban. But his staff and the guys that he has in place, I mean, are doing a great job, and he's done a great job of kind of keeping former players around and including them. He's all about tradition, and it's fun to see where he's taking the program.
Yeah, so it feels like at this point the expectation now is win a national championship or make it to the playoffs and then we contend for a national championship every year. Was that the same expectation like when you got on campus?
Of course, I mean, I know they hadn't won a national championship in years
Hmm.
when we got there, but that's always the goal. Um, to be at that time top 2 teams in the BCS and have a chance to play for it. So uh, you don't want to say it's championship or bust, but I
Hmm.
mean, you really feel like you know at least having an opportunity to get there. If not, then back then it was the Rose Bowl.
Hmm. What makes Justin Fields so special as a quarterback? You know, if you were a wide receiver, it seems like he can really get the ball to those guys out there. What makes him special?
It seems like it's just his composure in the pocket. He's well composed back there, going through his reads. He can make all the throws. Very bright kid. So glad to see that this whole new transfer system has worked out
Mhm.
for us, and we were able to get Fields, and he's done a great job.
So it seems like there's a lot of talent at wide receiver there. How much do you keep up with what they're doing? You know, do you see them continuing to like move forward with that greatness?
I think so. When you look at the freshman and what he did, gosh, what's his name right now?
Wilson?
Wilson, yeah, Garrett Wilson. What he did as a freshman and the guys that they've had and what they have coming in from Gee Scott and other kids like that. I mean, 4 and 5 star recruits at receiver coming in. I think it's just going to continue to go in a great direction for us at receiver.
Yeah, it feels like they're just going to continue to that track that Urban Meyer built, and they're just going to keep getting better and better as it goes on. It feels like a championship isn't inevitable with the way that they're recruiting, where they're bringing kids in, where they're playing on the field. Just feels like a championship is almost inevitable, more of a when rather than if.
Yeah, exactly. It feels the same way.
So just have a couple more questions here, and then I'll let you get out of here. Don't want to take up too much of your day. First one is, other than the Miami National Championship game, what was your favorite game you played in college?
Oh man. Uh Jeez, that's tough. It was a lot of great games. Of course, Purdue, just because of Holy Buckeye.
Hmm.
But that Kansas State bowl game was actually a lot of fun. I mean, it was my last game
I remember that one
as a
very vividly.
Buckeye. Um, had a couple touchdowns and broke the receiving record that game. So that was one of my favorite games right there.
I remember that game very, very vividly. I also remember you returning a punt against Iowa, if I'm right.
Yeah, yeah, I did that the latter half of that season.
Yeah, when you turned into a punt returner for a short period of time.
Right, whatever you can do back then.
Who was the best player that you ever played with?
Played with.
It could be college or NFL.
Let's stick with college. Um, Jeez. At the time, I mean, Mike Doss,
Mhm.
All American safety. I mean, he was doing it all on defense. So it was probably one of the best players I ever played with.
Yeah, because he came back for that season too, didn't he?
Yeah, he came back for his senior year. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure he was a huge help on that defense. Now, who was the best player that you thought you ever played against in college?
Hmm. Probably Philip Rivers.
Okay, that's fair.
Um, he came to the shoe and threw for. I mean, oh shoot, and he threw for. I don't know. We couldn't stop him. It took us to double overtime in our place, and it was unbelievable.
I remember that game very vividly because my dad was he was on vacation and he couldn't leave his TV. He wouldn't actually go out on vacation until the game was over.
Yeah, it
He
was a good game.
he wanted to see how that game ended first. Uh,
Yeah.
so on top of this, obviously recruiting is probably a lot different than it is now or back when you were there.
Mhm.
Where else were you looking to go? And if you would have went anywhere else other than Ohio State, where would you have gone?
I took a trip to Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech.
Hmm.
Um, Urban Meyer was actually the receiver coach at Notre Dame at the time, so he was recruiting me hard back then, which was crazy.
That's funny to think
Um,
about.
yeah. So it was tough. I don't know. Ohio State was so far ahead of everybody. I don't know who really would have been my second option.
Okay.
Um, Vic was my host at Virginia Tech.
Oh, wow.
So
So
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Okay.
I mean, it was Ohio State all the way.
Understandable. They got a good one out of you.
Yeah.
Uh, awesome. Well, I appreciate you
Mhm.
joining me today. Loved having you do this. Thanks for everything, and hope you do well with everything else after this.
All right. No, appreciate that.